Likes to solve riddles.
A good coder is someone who can think through clearly and implement their idea into code.
10 years ago, we were coding for computers, but now everything is a computer.
A lot of the redundant and rudimentary stuff we do as a developer will be taken over by these automated processes.
Things like human-brain interfaces and machine learning and neural networks.
Potentially a new language that doesn't even exist yet.
I still believe we have a bright future, despite self-driving cars and artificial intelligence.
Interacting with a keyboard-less layout.
I think we're going to see a lot more voice interaction with devices.
Hopefully not computers coding themselves. This would be like, how it's called, the singularity, right?
I code because I love coding.
I code because I love, for me, it's like a brain puzzle.
Because I'm a builder and I ran out of Lego bricks.
There's a lot of creative juices that flow when I write code.
Because I like making things, basically.
Coding is fun. It's a fascinating, wide-open field where you can do anything you absolutely want to do.
Having a problem that you turn into a solution through code is one of the most beautiful things in a job that I can imagine doing.
Bonjour, bienvenue à Oracle Code Paris. Je suis Yolande Poirier et je vais être votre MC aujourd'hui. Alors, Oracle Code. Donc on a fait 20 villes depuis le début de l'année à travers le monde et c'est notre dernier stop en fait pour ce tour et on a décidé de finir en beauté à Paris avec vous. Alors merci beaucoup d'être là. Donc, qu'est-ce que c'est Oracle Code? Alors, qu'est-ce qu'on a essayé de faire? C'est qu'on veut en fait vous donner du contenu très pratique. Donc, on a des conférences et aussi des hands-on lab qui sont donc très concrets, qui sont faits en fait pour vous donner une expérience très pratique sur des technologies d'aujourd'hui et qui pour vous préparer au futur. Donc, ces genres de technologies, ça va être intelligence artificielle par exemple, machine learning, il y a aussi beaucoup de contenu sur Java par exemple, Chatbot, blockchain qu'on va aussi avoir ce matin. Voilà. Je vous recommande de télécharger l'application mobile, donc vous pouvez la trouver sur Apple Store ou Google Play. Vous avez juste à télécharger Oracle Event et de trouver en fait l'événement aujourd'hui donc à Paris. Nous avons aussi donc le hashtag Oracle Code pour cet événement et un Twitter handle qu'on a créé aussi pour cette série. Alors notre premier intervenant, so I'll switch to English because this is an international event. So she is a managing partner for eProseed. She's also an ace. She's been programming in Java and she's certified. She's the co-author as well. She co-authored SOA Made Simple. So please welcome Lonneke Dikmans. Please follow me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here in Paris. I've done a lot of presentations, but it's actually the first time I'm doing it in France. Unfortunately, I don't speak French, so I can understand a little bit, but me explaining something in French would be really, I don't know, not worth listening to this early in the morning. So I'll do it in English, and I hope that's okay for you. I want to talk about how you can follow whatever happens when you program a bigger problem, like a business process where you order something, or another example, when you have an employee that onboards and a lot of data is going to flow through different systems. And over the years, we have had some different solutions, and I don't know how many of you have ever worked with something like Oracle SOA Suite, where you had BPEL to orchestrate that. Now we, of course, as we're all aware of it, we have new architectures. And so it's interesting to see how do you handle keeping track of your business process when you have a modern architecture like microservices or serverless, because with microservices we want to be decoupled. If you're decoupled, it's harder to keep track. So that's basically what we're investigating here. 3 examples. What is a little bit considered already legacy, even though it's not that old, then microservices and serverless. Well, I've already been introduced, so I won't go into too much detail here. eProseed is a Oracle partner, and we're present in EMEA and South America, so we have different offices in different parts of the world, including since I think last year in France. And so first I'll talk a little bit about the difference. What is different in new architectures compared to what we do today? And then show the microservices architecture and then the functions. I will not go into very much detail of each of those because there are plenty of sessions today that you can follow. And at the end of this presentation, there's a link. So if you follow any of these links, you can find more information, for example, on microservices and what it means, but also about serverless. And then as an example, we will look at a well-known process, is what happened to my order, which is, of course, important for both the customer, who wants to know what happened to my order when you order something online, for example, but also for the supplier. And we'll look at 3 different examples and then come to a conclusion. So first of all, serverless, because it's a little bit of an overloaded term. There's basically, also if you look at the Oracle solutions, 2 ways that the term serverless is used. One is where you have a backend as a service, for example, the mobile cloud service, which is a mobile backend as a service, where you as a developer can use an ecosystem of platform services, and all you have to do is write Node functions or Node.js functions. So basically your application uses an ecosystem of platform services that is already there. And so a mobile backend as a service is an example of serverless, but most of the time when people are talking about serverless, they're talking about functions. And that is also what you will see here at Oracle Code. A number of sessions will be talking about mobile cloud service, but a lot of them are about FN, which is a new open source serverless framework to write Java functions or other languages. I'm a Java developer as a background, so I like the fact that they have Java functions. And that is a different type of architecture where you even have smaller units of work, right? So we don't have a big system like our ERP system anymore. We don't create containers that have specific logic for an order, but we make them even smaller. So for example, if you look at an order application, in the past you would build something that would do the ordering, the shipping, and everything, right? So they would keep track of the entire process. Excuse me. Then we figured there were some issues with that in terms of flexibility and being able to change it. So we go to a microservice architecture where you actually make them independent, and you have an order microservice, a product microservice, and a shipping microservice, for example. And now with functions, with serverless, it's even smaller, right? It's receive an order or calculate the price, or it's very fine-grained functions that you write that are very easy to change, very easy to build, and you don't have to worry about anything. So all you worry about is writing your Java function, and all the rest is being taken care of by the platform. But of course, if you have a whole string of functions, you want to keep track of what already happened, right? So that is the challenge that we're talking about when you talk about these architectures. If you want to know more about serverless and definitions, I highly recommend an article by Mike Roberts from Symphonia that is on the ThoughtWorks website. He has very good examples of what it means and compares that to traditional Java applications compared to serverless. So I highly recommend that you do a Google in your break or so. Well, you can do it now, of course, but and then take a look at the explanations there. So here you see a little picture, and that sort of illustrates what I was saying. And there's one thing that I want to point out here, that when we have a traditional J2E application, we separate the business logic and put that on the server and have a thin client, right? So you can see that I cannot point at the other screens, unfortunately, but you can see that the client here is fairly thin, and that can be a JavaScript client or a .NET client or a Java, whatever, right? So HTML client, and your business logic is on the server in the runtime. So your Java client is very thin, right? We came, back in the days when I started, we came from a thick client on your desktop, and then we figured that's sort of complicated, so now we have a thin client, and all the logic will be sitting on your server. Now, if you have independent microservices, like my order or my product, and I have some technology for the logic of that microservice, I need to string them together. So what you see in a lot of those architectures is that the business logic goes back into the client. So what happens after a user presses a certain button is being programmed in the client. And so you will have some duplication of code, of course, because different applications will write the same logic to do, for example, a credit check after that you placed an order. So to prevent that, you might want to come up with some orchestration solution. And the same happens with serverless, right? If you have a whole bunch of functions, you have to have something that puts them together. It's like with your PL SQL or with your Java or whatever you're writing in. You need something to string these functions together and make some business rules about that. So I can only place an order if I have enough credit. That means I have to go to the credit function or service or whatever. I can only place an order if there's enough products in stock. If the products are gone, I cannot place the order. So there's some process logic that I need to write. And because I no longer have this monolith here where I have all that, I need to put it somewhere else. So and if you start Googling orchestration versus choreography, you'll find a lot of hits, and there's a lot of debates about what is best. Now personally, I don't believe there's one best solution. There's solutions for specific cases, and it's important that you think about what solution you want to use, and that's why I'm comparing some solutions here to help you decide for your own application. If I write a whole bunch of functions, how am I going to string those together? Or if I'm in a microservice architecture, do I want to string them together, or do I want to keep it more decoupled? So a little bit about why would we even go to those modern architectures. I think most of you will have seen the reasons for that. But one of the things, of course, if you have a traditional Java application, is that usually you scale by layer. So if you need more compute power for your business logic, you'll add another server, J2EE server, put it in a cluster, have load balancing. If you need more processing power in the database, you'll create a rack or something like that, right? So every time you need more, you'll do that in a specific layer. But often there's multiple services or applications running on that server, and one might not need all that database power. It might only have 2 tables or something like that. And another one won't need all that memory, right? So, but you're forced, because everybody's living in that same environment in that monolith, to scale all of your functions the same way. And so that is the advantage of microservices, is that you actually can decide, oh, I'm having a lot of orders, I'm just scaling the order microservice, not my entire database, not my entire server, just what I need in terms of compute power. But then, again, it scales the entire microservice. For serverless, it scales per invocation. If I have a lot of orders, automatically it will whip up a lot of functions for you, instances. So the specific functionality that you're using will be scaled up, and all the rest won't use any compute power. So that makes it cheap in terms of compute power that you use, because it will only scale up what you actually use and not scale up an entire layer. The downside is you don't have any caching, right? Because you have a function, it's called. If I call it again, it will be gone again. So it's very stupid, and it doesn't know that you already asked 10 times for the same product. So no caching, it will go to the database every time and give you that result. So we need these modern architectures, but sometimes there are some cases, of course, that you don't want to use them and stick with what you already have. So it's important to pick the right solution for these things. And I think that's the fun part about being a developer nowadays, is we have a lot of options. which makes it a little bit complicated maybe, but also we have choices. And what I really like about this FN one is if you're coming from a Java world, you don't have to learn JavaScript or some other language, because the FN framework is a serverless framework in Java. So now the orchestration, as I explained before, if, say, as an example, but any process works, right? Onboarding, an order process. But if I would do orchestration, I would in advance have some engine that mentions all the steps that need to be taken in what order. And of course you can do ifs and parallel stuff, and so this is a very simple picture. But in advance it will be described, and at runtime, every time an order comes in, a new instance of that orchestration is going to be started, and you can follow exactly where the order is. If a customer calls and says, hey, I've ordered these shoes last night and they haven't arrived yet, then the customer service can go and look for that instance and say, oh yeah, that's right, because they're in the delivery phase, right? So you can always see what's happening, and you know what's going to be happening next, because you can see it. Now, the downside, of course, is that that needs an additional engine, and sometimes you don't always want the same thing to happen. Sometimes you want to be a little bit more flexible, depending on the event. Maybe if it's raining, you want to postpone the delivery time. It's a silly example, but there might be events, a strike, where you want to promise something different or do something different, so respond to events. So that's where you have the choreography, where the logic of what you need to do is built in your service, and it will be executed when an event happens. And why do we call it like this? Well, we all know an orchestra where you have this conductor, and nobody will play a note unless, the conductor moves his hands, right? So even though the musician exactly knows when to go, they will only do it as soon as the conductor says, now it's your turn. So there's one guy who is responsible for who's going to do what at what time. The person that's executing it doesn't have to know what happened before or what happened after, right? I'm playing now my violin piece here and hit my drum when the conductor does this, and otherwise I won't do anything. Whereas if you're a choreographer, you're, for example, with a dance, you explain in advance how it works, but when you're dancing, you as a dancer know that when you're finished, it's my turn and I'm going to catch you. Like, there's nobody who's going to say, catch her now, right? If you have to catch someone. That is all within the person. And that is also happening with your service. So you will program some logic. If this happens, I will do this. Now, if I call customer service and say, where's my order? I don't know. Because there's no central piece that will keep track of my order. And so I don't know what happens. And I have to go through all the events and make sure that that one event for this customer went through a number of these things, so I need to have a description, and it becomes much harder to figure out what happened with it. So that is why when you have microservices, the big advantage is it's decoupled, so if I want to change something, nothing breaks. However, if I want to know what is happening and what will happen next, I don't know. So there are very good use cases when you want to do this, but there's also some use cases where you don't want to do it. So as I said, there's a number of solutions for this problem, right? You want to know what happened. You can program that logic in the client, but it means you repeat a lot of that logic. You can do orchestration. You have a central conductor. It's very inflexible, because if that conductor wants to change something, it's really hard, right? Because you have to have that conductor has to do that, where with the choreography, all you do is tell one person to do something different, and then, that's, in that part it might work. But you do need a description outside of that. And you also can only reuse pieces of functionality if the begin and end of that service is the same, right? So the reuse of services is a bit lower when you do that, because you have process logic inside of your service. So if your service assumes the credit check already happened, it won't work in an application where it doesn't assume that it already happened. So it's a little bit harder to do that. So actually Netflix, who is of course very famous for having a very loosely coupled microservices architecture with all the DevOps and very, I think, cool architecture that is an example for a lot of people, decided that they could no longer handle peer-to-peer choreography because they lost track of where it was, and the process flows were embedded in multiple applications in the code, right? So it became for them very hard to keep track of processes that they were running and to change it and make sure it changed everywhere. And plus, you have to have some assumptions about the input and the output of the messages that you're sending. So even though you're using events, if some data is missing in the event, you still cannot run your service. So you're still, even though it's not a runtime dependency, you have a semantic coupling between two services, which is completely hidden in your code. It's not explicit. So they decided to come with a orchestration framework. Even though it's a full microservice architecture, they decided to come up with that. That doesn't mean they use that everywhere, of course. There's plenty of use cases where they still do the events and the decoupling. But if they have cases where you want to know how much are we done with process X, if you want to reuse some of their process logic, they use the conductor. So let's take a look at what that looks like and what are things why people don't like orchestration. Because, of course, when it first came about, we all said, oh, that's our solution, right? The entire NT world is going to be safe because we have these orchestration engines and we can create reusable services and everything will be cheap and fast. But of course, there's some downsides to it. So let's compare some of the solutions. So in the past, and I don't expect you to read all the details, but we would have a BPEL flow, and it's nice because you can visualize it, right? So you can see what will happen and how it's defined, and it's described in a domain-specific language in BPEL. It's XML, and then there's an engine that can interpret that XML and knows what to do when you go to the next step. So, for example, oh, I keep doing that. You can see here that it has the word invoke, and that engine knows, if I see the word invoke, I need to go call out an external service. So it's a specific language designed to define the steps, and it's sitting there as a conductor, telling every service, now it's your turn, now it's the drums, now it's so every time that you go through this flow, it's described in the XML, and if you want to know how far along am I, you can actually tell because you have the entire flow described in an external part. The hard part, of course, is if you didn't learn any BPEL, this doesn't make any sense, right? So you have to learn a new language. You might be a Java developer writing a Java service. Now you want to do orchestration, and they tell you, yeah, you have to learn BPEL, and you have to get this SOA suite and install it, and I'll see you in a week once you've installed it. And so it gives you a lot of additional work, also in operations, to manage these servers. It's nice because you have the visual representation, and that's of course very nice. The services are completely independent of the process logic. And you can say, I don't care, but I think for orders, for example, there's two models, right? You have a service where you first pay and then it gets delivered, and you might have a case where you deliver it first and then pay. For the delivery service, it doesn't matter because it doesn't have any clue. It's like the drummer. They just hit the drum whenever they're told. They don't know what happened before or after, and you can reuse that drummer in any orchestra, right? In any piece. So there's no context of that process flow. So that makes it really reusable. But the con, as I said, you need to learn this XML language and this tool that will interpret that for you. It's extremely hard to unit test because, of course, when you have an XML file, it needs to be interpreted by an engine. What is that engine? That's your server. So before you can run a unit test, you have to deploy it. And then it will call out to all these services, right? So having JUnit running on something like this is simply impossible. So it's very hard to do checks before you actually go to the server. So DevOps, continuous integration, you can do it with these tools, but it's much harder than with Java. And then, of course, what happens, a lot of those services are also built in that language, so it starts to be a very big monolith, just not written in Java, but in XML. And we end up with the same problems we had before, no decoupling, everybody is connected to everybody, and as soon as you try to change something, the entire process breaks, right? So there's there's a lot of pros, but there's also a lot of cons to this approach. Now, basically, if you look at what Netflix did with Conductor, even though they're very cool and hip and happening, it's the same. The difference is they chose JSON as a domain-specific language, so not XML, because, of course, we all like JSON nowadays. I have to admit, I like it better than XML myself as well. But basically, they did the same thing, right? So there's a file describing what needs to happen, and I'll show you. And then there's an engine that will interpret that file. So now, when you're a Java programmer or a JavaScript programmer, you still have to learn a new language, right? You have to learn this DSL. You have to deploy it to the server before you can unit test, because it's very hard to unit test this JSON. I mean, you can check that it's valid, of course, but that's all you can do without deploying. So it's not really that different from having BPEL. It's just more modern technology. It's a little bit less bloated because it's JavaScript based rather than JEE. But the problems you have with Conductor are very similar to what you have with BPEL in the past or in the present. I'm going live next week with a BPEL project, right? So there's plenty of BPEL around, even though we call it legacy right now. But now, what FN Flow will give you, and FN, as I said before, is the serverless open source project that Oracle created that you can go to GitHub and download. You can write in Java or in JavaScript, and it has APIs for stringing together these functions that you write. So if I write 4 Java functions, one to order, one to do a credit check, one to do another thing, and I want to string them together, I don't have to switch to another language. I don't have to go to XML or JSON or whatever. I can write it in Java. It's Java, so I can do unit test. I might need some mocks, of course, but I can do it without having to deploy and do all that stuff. So I can stick with the tool I've chosen. Plus, they are working, but that's a temporary one, and I don't think the business will like this one very much. So it's a technical visualization, of course. But there is also a visualization of what is happening. So rather than just hard coding is not the real word, but rather than putting your flow in your Java, like regular Java, using flow gives you the advantage of having a visualization and a description. So if anybody wants to know how much or where is my order in my process, there's a visualization where you can see which activities are waiting to be executed and which one are already there. And so you know what is happening with your order. But you don't have to switch to another language. You can still stick with Java and run it in your Java functions. There's some error handling also involved, because of course that's usually the hard part, right? Writing a piece of Java saying, okay, first call this, then do that, is easy. And you can do that in any language, basically, it's functional programming. But what happens if something goes wrong? Should I stop the entire flow? Do I want to retry? Do I want to compensate? There's lots of problems. So error handling is built in FN Flow. I'm not going to explain it too much. James will talk about FN. And there's hands-on labs about FN and some sessions in French. So if you want to know more about that, I recommend you follow that. And basically, if you know Java 8, the completion stage and completable futures, you'll recognize the way it's set up. I didn't have experience with that specific part, but I do have experience with Node.js and promises in Bluebird, and it's very similar to that as well. So what they've done is they use known concept to work with asynchronous calls, so you can call multiple things, wait for them to come back, and have a visualization of that flow. Now, as an example, so this is Java code. They're working, I think, on the other languages. So currently the FN framework supports multiple languages. The Java part supports this flow part. So suppose I have one action I want to do. I define a flow, and then I can call asynchronously a function, wait for it to return, and chain it to another one, which you can see here. So, I keep doing that. You can see the F1, and so once that returns, because it says then apply, it will get the result. So you can have asynchronous functions calling, and then once they come back, they will pick up the result from whatever came before. So this is waiting for one when something comes back, and this is multiple computations in parallel. So the nice part is you don't have to write all the threading and do complicated parts. You write 3 operations, and then you say, I want the third one to be executed when 1 and 2 are done. And so you can combine that result. And so in this case, that would return hello world, even though it might take a little bit of time for function 2 to come back. And then function 1, it will wait until the 2 of them are done. And you don't have to write all that threading yourself and start polling and looking for it. Did it already happen? That is built into this framework. So basically what this allows you is to write very small functions, completely separated from each other, and then string them together in the same language that you were using to write these functions, which as a developer is very nice, of course. Plus, you can do the unit testing, because it's all written in Java, right? So you don't need an interpretation engine like you do for XML or JSON domain-specific languages. So you can run this on your machine without having to do anything specific for an interpretation of the engine. So we've seen 3 examples of how we can keep track of our flow in 3 different architectures, right? More traditional service-oriented architecture, where I put everything on a server and I keep track of my flow in BPEL, domain-specific language. We've seen Conductor. That's a very similar solution for microservices architectures in JavaScript, but with similar downsides and positive sides of BPEL. And FN Flow, which is fairly new and very promising as far as I'm concerned, because it takes away some of the downsides in being productive and doing DevOps and unit testing, because all you need is Java and not another language. So again, I didn't go into details of FN, because that's a whole session. I mean, you could spend the whole day talking about FN, I think. So that would be too much for this specific session. If I hoped I spiked a little bit of your interest for that, and I recommend that you try the hands-on labs. The other thing that is really interesting about FN is a lot of the serverless needs to be really fast. And in the past, of course, Java would have startup time problems with a virtual machine, because every time you start a function, of course, you have to fire up a virtual machine. It will do some just-in-time stuff and then start. But for FN, they've optimized it using AOT, and so it's really fast. And I was talking to some of the guys, and I think they're around from that team, that they're doing some performance tests, and currently they run it in Docker, and it spends more time starting up the Docker machine than the Java code itself. So they are really optimizing it so that you can actually do serverless in Java. So it's very interesting. And of course, for FN you need a provider. It's an open source project, and currently you need somewhere to host it. So Amazon, for example, hosts Lambda. And of course, if you want to do serverless with FN, you have to have some sort of a provider that will give you the FN server. You can try it on your own laptop, but of course that's not the idea. The idea is that it ends up at some provider. And so if you want to know what happened to your order and you're using FN, it's all right there. It's all in Java code, and you can see it in the visualization. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, we can still keep track of our orders and of our processes, even when we're moving from what we call legacy, but a lot of people are still doing it, of course, to the new hip and happening architectures like microservices and serverless by using solutions like this. I guess that was it. Thank you very much. Oh, there's the links.
Thank you so much, Lonneke. So thank you. That was a really great explanation and very simple. Our next guest is going to talk about chatbots, blockchain transactions, serverless as well. So please help me welcome and applaud James Austin, who is a cloud platform responsible of with strategy and so forth.
Thank you. Ooh, I don't need that. I have a thing here. It's great to see so many of you here. Particularly great to see you at a developer event. Because let's face it, Oracle, what do we think of most of the time when we see Oracle? Apart from the safe harbor statement, which is almost certainly the first thing that you see when you interact with Oracle, is this. Aren't we just a database company? Anybody here thinking that Oracle is right at the leading edge of technology as far as developers is concerned? Anybody actively using Oracle technology to build right now? Okay. Come on! Throw me a bone here, please. So we're not just a database company. Lots of people think perhaps that we are, but we're not. There's a lot more to us than that. We've been very, very active over the last 5 or 8 years, I would say, 5 to 8, in a whole range of places. Lonneke has just spoken about the FN project, an open source initiative started by Oracle. Believe it or not, what you've just heard from Lonneke is built with Go. Not with Java, not with JavaScript, but Go. It's an open source project to which there are 2,600 commits every month. Really quite a popular site to be building out a cloud agnostic serverless platform. So you can take this and you can put it anywhere. It isn't tied to one particular space. Oracle Jet is an investment, and upstairs we have some visual builder areas, which is a tool to help you to build effective JavaScript. And it's just an extension toolkit, Knockout.js, and a combination of other frameworks brought together to make it easier to consume. You may have seen last year the announcement around Docker and the fact that we have worked with the Docker organization to bring together our technologies and the demands of our customers and you to make our technology available in Docker containers. Obviously, Java more recently has been announced as open sourced as well. So OpenJDK, Hotspot are now completely interchangeable. Same code, same basis. So we've been investing for a while in application development. And you know, we noticed something because we were paying attention. And it's this. The trends in application development today, starting with serverless functions, as we've heard, of course, there's a growing requirement for serverless. Secondly, conversational interaction. How do we interact today? Does anybody in the room have an Echo in their house? Or a Google Home, thank you. Or one of those new Apple things where you say, hey, Siri. Sorry, otherwise everybody would go off. And ask it to do something. That digital assistant, the chatbot capability, has grown enormously. But is it a science project? Because we need artificial intelligence behind it in order to understand what we say. So do I start from the ground up, or do I do something different? From the perspective of new ways of having shared transactions, a distributed model to help us with trust, there's blockchain, which has been probably something we started hearing about 6 or 7 years ago, but has now become something very, very exciting in that space. Machine learning itself is no longer about a computer playing chess with a guy from Russia and eventually beating him. It's in your hand. When we do say, OK, Google, or whatever it may be, then we're going through a machine learning layer there. And of course, open source. Not something that Oracle is super well known for, has to be said. But what we do believe is this. Open source is something that everybody likes to use. Everyone likes to use open source because it's free, and it's also something that we can all start to learn about and innovate with. but it's actually pretty tough to set up. If I want to bring together a whole blockchain environment from an open source perspective, I have a lot of pieces of infrastructure I need to build. So how can we make that easier? How can we take the free beer that is open source and take away the next day when we all have a headache? And of course, finally, when we take all of these technologies together, we've started, and I was speaking to Lonneke earlier, and she was saying, in the middle of the night, you wake up and think, oh no, I didn't deploy that piece. Ah! And this is where DevOps and automation, continuous integration and continuous delivery has come from. But what we're seeing is a move away from that, because we're spending an increasing amount of time building a DevOps environment. So instead of having a guy building code, we've got a guy who's building code to build my infrastructure. So we're seeing a trend towards something called no-ops, where the platform knows how to build itself. So it's just a case of bring the code, deploy it, get it done, carry on. So there's a big change. Now, each of these 6 areas stands alone, but they are not islands. Blockchain, fantastic technology, relatively difficult to explain to your businessman why it's important to him if it's on its own. These need to come together. Not a single island, but a number of islands creating a greater whole. So, how do we make use of this technology? Well, let's take a simple use case. I'm going to sell or buy a car. Has anybody bought a car here? Or a motorbike? Or anything? They bought some clothes, maybe. So when we go through and we buy a car, I think, well, I don't particularly like going to a car showroom or selling a car, go to a car showroom and talking to the sales guy who wants me to buy the very, very expensive one. So let's think about it like this. Instead of going to see a person about it, I'm going to offer a different channel. I'm going to make it easier for me to come in, interact, and say, hey, I'd like to sell a car and be able to go through a process where I've sold a car, but I've done so over a conversational interface. No website to go to, no form to fill out. I just have a chat. So how do I do that? Well, let's consider the following. At the top left, number 1, I'm going to interact with a conversational interface or a chatbot and say, hey, do you know, I want to sell this car, and it's going to do some checks, it's going to find that car, it's going to help me to sell it. Secondly, at the back end, that chatbot, when I say it's going to do checks and it's going to help me to sell it, it's going to use functions, or FN, to call in and to make sure that my car is not stolen. And one of the reasons why, in some ways, I am glad this is the last Oracle code. The person involved whose car I have been buying and selling for the past probably 2 or 3 months, finally they will stop texting me and asking me where their car is. So we'll be able to check, is the car stolen? Has it got a problem? Has it got a full service history? And then we're going to make that sale permanent by putting it onto a blockchain at the end. And then we can go around and we can buy the car back. And when you see the car, you'll understand why I want to buy it back. So here's the architecture. Very simple. James wants to sell a car on the left-hand side. And I'm going to go through. I'm going to speak to my chatbot at the other end. It's going to use a freely available optical character recognition mechanism. It's going to go through a simple service, call FN to call the checks that we need, and then in the end, we're going to push it into the peer node on a blockchain. And of course, here's my car. And simply, I am going to take that car from my ownership and put it into the blockchain ownership itself. Now, that's part of one dealer, but this isn't just one dealer on its own, it's a number of dealers together. And of course, when I buy the car back, same process, but I'm just going to take that car back out of the blockchain. So let's show you the chatbot itself. And at this point, just to prove it's live, there's a dreadful picture of me. Let's change that to something that makes more sense. Or hopefully more sense, anyway. All right. So today I have joined, that's quite small, see if we can get it to be a little bit more visible. So today I'm on a chat environment on Facebook, or Facebook Messenger, with John's dealership. John is a particularly well-known individual for cars, so I'm going to say hi, just to wake him up. Oh no, hang on, let's drop that. Better, right, okay, so I am selling a car today. And he says, that's great, we offer competitive prices for clients like you. Well, yep, I do a lot of work with John, or at least certainly have done over the last couple of months anyway. Okay, so let's share the license plate. And as you can see, I've been to a few places recently. Let's see if I can actually get down to somewhere where the license plate is. There's a cat, that's helpful. There we are, there's the license plate. Awesome. So we're going to put that one up. That's great. Can we have a recent picture of your car, please? Well, yes, we can try that as well. Actually, was it? Here we go. You know, this part has actually got slower and slower the more places I've been. So here we go. There's the car. In this particular case, this is Larry Ellison's Lexus LFA. And when I did the Berlin session, one of the reasons why we were swapped, because my manager in North America was the man who was going to do Berlin. Unfortunately, he'd been selling and buying this car a lot, and he's in prison now. Which I'm hoping that I can ignore. So here we go. We get the car details. So that's a call out to FN in the background. Old registration number. Thank you very much. Is this correct? Yes, it is. So we take that. What's the mileage on the car? Well, because I've stolen it a few times now, it's around 2,500 miles. Okay, and he looks up how much it's worth. It's worth $375,000. Bit rich for my blood, but they're going to give me $385,000, which is brilliant because I'm stealing Larry's car. It's not mine. So yes, I'll have that. Okay, so I can now go in and have a chat with John's dealership at a later date, and we can complete that purchase. Now, how did I build that? Did I go through and train a neural network and teach it how to understand language and then teach it what I mean? No, I did not. What I did instead, oh, gone too far, there we are. What I did instead was this. If we flip over to here and actually get onto the right page, that would always help. Here we have an environment where we built the chatbot with Oracle Chatbots platform, or Intelligent Bots platform. What it does is allow you to marry up an intent. I want to sell a car. I want to buy a car. It has already been trained as a neural network to understand the language that I'm using. And so I'm going to say for sell a car, here are the list of phrases that I can use in order to get it to realize I want to sell a car and trigger a process. So looking at that, selling a car at the moment, I'm going to want to test it. So let's go through and test that. And let's have a look at the intent that comes out. It says, I want to sell Larry's car. Now the funny thing is, when I say I want to sell Larry's car, it mistakenly comes up with a confidence of 100% that actually I want to buy a car. Now that's wrong. I don't want it to reach that conclusion. So instead, I'm going to say, let's make that a sell car, add the example. So it adds it to my corpus of utterances, or my list of phrases. I'm going to look at the training options I have, and in this case, I have a high-performance one, or a Swift one for developers, and then a much deeper machine learning model underneath, but I'm going to do it quick, and hit that button, train it. So pretty quick to do that. I can then rerun that with exactly the same phrase, and now I have 100% hit on I want to sell Larry's car. Now, if I do something that's slightly different, it's not exactly these phrases that it will match. It's something that is a fuzzy match. Do I want to sell a car? Is it Larry's car? Am I being chased by the police and I need to get away because I've sold Larry's car? But the key here is that I'm able to very quickly stand on the platform that's already there and focus on building my chatbot and the conversational interaction that I want, not working on the details of how to build out AI. And so our focus for all of these development environments, all of this innovation that Oracle is bringing, is not to offer the same as everybody else, but actually just to make it easier to get hold of this technology and make the most of it. So that's the chatbot done. So let's come back to our plan as to where we were. And having been through the chatbot environment, Lonneke very kindly went through a lot of the information around serverless functions, microservices, in a build, deploy, and iterate kind of a model. Now, she did mention FN Project. FN Project is a platform where it's open source today. You can go to fnproject.io and download it and start using it on your laptop immediately. You can deploy it to any cloud. And our plan from Oracle is to make this serverless platform available in Oracle Cloud towards the end of this year. And it's also possible to take exactly the same model and deploy it to AWS or Azure or Google or anyone who provides a core set of infrastructure. This is not tied to one particular cloud vendor. That is our goal, to contribute to open source, to make it more consumable. As I mentioned, it has been run through with 2,600 commits every month. And when we think about what an FN function is, it's simple. Is anybody old enough to remember going through building mainframe functions? Ah, you're all young. Fantastic. So it's simple. I have a box. There's an input that comes in, strangely, through standard in, and there's an output that comes out of standard out. And, of course, we throw out logs to standard error. It's as simple as that. The server, now this is funny because it is serverless, but there is a server behind it. But it just means that that server isn't something you have to deal with. That's something the provider of that service will provide. So the server itself handles everything else. How do we run it? How do we spin up a container? How do we instantiate the right model of language? All done for you. And if that's not enough, clearly we need a command line interface. And it's very simple, right? FN init, because I want to build out a scaffold or a framework that I'm going to use. FN run, well, we're going to want to run it, ideally, before we do anything else. Test, clearly, because I need to unit test my functions. Deploy, so that I can step away from just command line and start to host it on an HTTP or REST-enabled endpoint. And FN call to be able to call those items that are in or deployed into the cloud. And of course, the route is very simple, defined by your app, your function. So it's the kind of well thought out REST structure that you'd expect. But we don't want to stop there. And this is where, when we think about selling our car, when we sell our car, we want to check how much it's worth. I want to check whether the car has been stolen out of the local car park. I want to go through a whole range of these pieces just to make sure that the car is valid and that I should sell it. And so there's a combination of things we need to do, and that's where flow comes in. And Lonneke quite effectively described the idea of our use of completable futures in the Java APIs to enable that for functions. But we're not stopping there. We're also introducing it for Node and for Python and for Go and just investing in that choice. Because when we think about selling our car, it looks like we just do a sell car function, but we don't. Behind it, there's a box. That's where we enter our functions. And we have a Carfax report. What is that car? What stereo does it have? What specification has it got? How does it work? Criminal lookup functions, and that's worked particularly well, certainly for Siddhartha. And then in in the FBI lookup, okay, and the international lookup functions as well. But the key here is we're orchestrating a number of pieces. And of course, we're using completable futures in a flow function. Now, it's very, very easy to go through and use this capability. And the code, okay, bit of an eye test, but effectively we go through, we set up a flow. We bring in a request for invoking the getCars function, because we might do this for many cars, not just for one. And then we're going to go through, and we're going to invoke that function of processing a car for each one that we have. We're going to do a Carfax check, a criminal lookup, and then at the end, we're going to have a flow done. Basically, when all of my cars have all been processed, we're good, and we carry on. So let's have a look at flow. Briefly. So let's give that a quick refresh. So what I have over here, if I quickly go back to, all right, let's ditch that. If I have a look in here, I have a number of different functions or other components that I'm using. And if I blow that up a little bit, whoa, we'll be able to see what it is. Someone's leaning on the light switch again, I think. So we have a couple of these: get cars, process car, sell car, Carfax, criminal lookup. So a whole range of functions that we want to bring together. And the way in which we're going to, if I can ever get back to it, there we are. The way in which we're going to call it, this is deployed to a nice light effects. Yeah. I feel like I'm in a disco. What we're going to do here, we've already deployed this. So it's now running on an HTTP server that's actually on my laptop. And we're going to call it by saying fn, because that's the core of the serverless part. Call, obvious, calling it. Ocode is the application space. And flow is the function that I'm calling. So when I hit that, and I will move this across to make it less invisible. So when I hit that, what I then get is essentially a stack trace to add some dynamic aspects. Now, in this particular case, because I've shrunk down the thing, the bar has appeared in the wrong place, which is annoying. But what I can do here is click on any one of the ones that are running at this particular moment, and underneath, I get a full run-through of the stack trace that's behind it and the implications of every event. This was created by, then it was caused by, then something else was caused by. So I get a view of how my code is running very, very simply. Our next step is to be able to create this kind of flow visually and generate the code from it. But first, we simply wanted to be able to show what we could do. So, back from there. So we've been through. We've made a call using our chatbot. We've come through, we've called our FN environment, and we've gathered information together. We've even seen how that flow of control works. Now the last part is plugging it back in to the blockchain. But before we do, and this is the really important part in my mind, ideally, I need to go to Bob's dealership, because although John is the guy who normally takes the car from me and doesn't ask too many questions, I need to go back to Bob. He is the guy that I normally buy the car back from. So I'm going to say, hello, Bob. Let's see what you've got to do. Now, Bob obviously doesn't have the car that I've just sold to John. And he's asking, well, what do I want to do? Well, I want to buy a car, because that text that appeared earlier was a case of Larry saying, dude, where's my car? It's gone. So if I have a look through, oh dear. This is going to be awkward. No thanks. I need Larry's car back. Or, oh, Parry's, wow, yeah. Be toast. Let's see what he has to say about that. Right, first thing is he says, I haven't got a car, I haven't got a Lexus anyway, but what I do have in my dealer network, because he interacts on a blockchain with other dealers in his network, he has found one that looks, as he says, that he thinks I would really like. And in fact, he's right, because that's exactly the car that we've just sold. But it's clearly not one that Bob has. It's somewhere else in the network, most likely John. So let's check out some of those details. Yep, that's exactly the one. Okay, would I like to buy this car? Yes, I would. Now, in a blockchain, there are a whole set of rules that go on. And those rules define how I might move a car from John's to Bob's dealership. Because Bob can't sell it if John owns it at the moment, or it has it in his inventory. It also defines the price. And it's clear that Bob is very, very happy to make some money himself, but obviously John wants to make some money as well. So Bob, bless his heart, has said that he will sell me this car back. Now, you remember we got $385,000 when I sold it. They now want nearly $400,000 when we buy it back. But given that, well, Larry will get me otherwise, I will buy that and I will take the hit. Maybe I can, I don't know, get a paper round. So when can I come and visit him for the paperwork? Okay, tomorrow afternoon. And we come up with, yay, okay. So he'll see me tomorrow at 2. So at least I can get out of my problem, which was really to keep safe and to get the car back into Larry's parking space before he really notices that it's gone. But we've done that with a blockchain, particularly with a permissioned blockchain. Why? Because I want to invite people to join my blockchain, not just have anybody join it. Because if anybody joins my blockchain, then I don't have control as a business. So permissioned blockchain. When we think about it, the car that was in there was in John's dealership. We have simply moved it from John's to Bob's and then sold it on, essentially doing that. And that's broadly what we've just done. But when we think about it, what is a blockchain? It's a fantastic way for organizations who are trying to trust each other, who need something extra, who need a piece of technology that will say, okay, these are the rules, we agree them, and we will apply them to this particular transaction, whether that's selling a car, moving something through the supply chain, proving the ownership of the house in which you live. But it's a distributed copy, so everybody in that environment who should have has a copy of that data. It's updated in near real time, and we say it's unalterable, it's nearly unalterable. It's incredibly difficult to make a change to say that that car was never sold. Inside here, we have proof that I have sold Larry's car and bought Larry's car, and then sold it and bought it and sold it and bought it and sold it and bought it. But that is forever. And it's very, very hard to break that when there are many people in that network. But it does allow those parties, and this is the key, it's all about trust. Can I give you that money and you say, yes, I received it? I need proof to say it's come out of my side and you have definitely received it, and I want that as a single proof. And that's really what the blockchain side is all about. There are countless areas of interest here, from healthcare, financial services is the obvious one, public sector around government, e-voting. How can I prove that I have voted already and that therefore I can't vote again? Or indeed in healthcare, so that I can gain access to the right records, but I know who has had access to those records. There are countless use cases that we have been involved with our customers. But when it comes to it, how have we built it? Well, number one, we have taken an open source project, the Hyperledger Fabric approach. We have taken that open source project and we've said, we could make this easier to use. We could really, really simplify this. So, how would we do it? Well, number one, we have taken the pieces of Hyperledger, the validating nodes, and we've said we're going to deploy them in a highly available, highly resilient, highly performant way across Oracle Cloud. So you don't have to work out how to make them resilient. Secondly, we've given you a highly performant world ledger. Is it Level DB or Couch DB? No. This is Barclay DB that's plugged in accordance with the Hyperledger pluggable database. Why? because it's so fast. We give you a place to deploy your smart contracts, which are written in Go or Node.js. We're working on Java as a new language that you can define your smart contracts in, but we're deploying them into containers. But you don't have to set up the containers and the orchestration. We have done that for you. Simple. Turn a key, you get started. The ordering service, when 10 things come in all at once, which one happens first? Simple. We take it through an ordering service. No proof of work, no massive computers trying to get a Bitcoin out of this. This is just, what order are these coming in? And we've made that resilient, because if your orderer doesn't work, your blockchain stops. So again, make it simple. We have a membership service pre-tied in to our identity cloud so you can connect it easily to your identity store. We've put a REST proxy at the front. Why? Well, because we want to make it easier for people to not just connect to blockchain from big computers, but also from one of these. Why wouldn't you interact on a blockchain here? Make it easy. Get anything able to connect. And then, of course, an administration console. So I can see what's going on. I can see the fact that something has moved, that these things are alive, that they're running, that they failed, that something's been recovered. And then possibly the most important part is we've packaged this up into a managed platform as a service. So that you can do this. You can use the REST API. You can build your applications using the gRPC software development kit. Or you can just build off the front of the REST side and build the applications you need. Simple access to core technology. And from a developer's perspective, it's this. Here's the platform. And there are 3 elements to it from a dev perspective. One is obviously building your applications on the left. At the top, there's the ability to dynamically build out private channels within that blockchain and be able to change that on the fly. So you have total control on how that works. And of course, the easy place to deploy your smart code or your smart contracts in terms of chain code. Do I need to worry about how I get my container orchestration going? No. Just press the button and it's done to the right space. Now the good news about this is that this is a piece of technology that we have from a demonstration perspective here. A simple view, actually let's close that off. That way we might actually be able to see what's going on. Okay. So we start out with a simple view of the environment itself. Let's make that slightly smaller. Over the last month, we've had a few transactions go through here, mainly buying and selling cars. There are commitments that have been made in the last month. There are endorsements, checks that, yes, this makes sense, that this should happen, that no, I've not broken anything. But it doesn't just stop there. I have 3 organizations. One of them is the owner or founder of this blockchain. It's Detroit Autos. One of them is John's dealership. One of them is Bob's dealership. And it is this technology that has allowed Bob to say, no, I don't have that car, but I know a man who does. Has he got one? Oh, he has. Great. Now let's transact and bring it across when James says, yes, I want to buy it. Each one of those have 2 peers. Why? Because I don't want one, because if one of them fails, then I've disappeared from the network. I need resilience. So that's built in, and you can choose how many you have. But there are also 5 channels and 2 pieces of chain code deployed as well. And if I have a brief look at my network, it looks a bit arguably dull to start with 3 lines, as I described before, but I can see in the topology how that's laid out. I have my 3 organizations, each one represented by 2 peers. And some of these peers, for example these in Bob's area, are in Bob's data center. They're not in the cloud, because Bob's actually quite happy to keep his separate. But that's fine, he can still participate. And then we have, in this case, a simple organization or orderer, and likewise a certificate authority within that space. Now this is replicated out in a larger scale environment, but you can very easily see what's happening. On top of that, from a node perspective, and there are many nodes as we've seen, we can have a look at the way that those nodes are connected. and we saw them earlier. When I have a look at the John channel, John is going to have a means of talking to the core of that blockchain. So I can separate out conversations between private members and public conversations. That controls what John can see. It also means that Bob can see that John has a car, but not how much he paid for it. So we have control. And to give you an idea of the kind of things that we can do with this, where are we? Well, number one, all of this is open to REST. That is broadly how it looks. When we go and hit the REST endpoint, I can go and query what it is that's actually in the car store at any given point. But it doesn't just stop there. I can then go into the demo, and hopefully make that a bit smaller so we can see what's going on. In this particular case, there's my car. I'm going to hit that one. It has a motor. Awesome. And I can see, if I just back that one down, the transference history of that particular car from John's to Bob's to Bob's to John's and so on. And down the right-hand side, I can see every single transaction ID that has happened as well. And if I make that a bit smaller, we might actually, oh, wrong way, might be able to see, yes, that was a Bob's to John's dealership. And of course, I can do that transfer again. I can log in as, in this particular case, actually, was it Bob's to John's or John's to Bob's? Well, getting old doesn't help. There you go, John's. So let's log in as John. There we are. Very secure, as you can tell. And I'm going to take 6, lick 274, and I'm going to transfer it to Bob's dealership. And I'm going to hit that transfer vehicle button, and hopefully I've spelt everything right. And I have not only a return code of success, but also the transaction ID that goes behind it. And when I go back to my trace space over here and requery, I can see right down at the bottom that I've just transferred it from John's to Bob's. So I have control, I have history that goes behind it as well. So outside of that, as I said right at the beginning, not one of these technologies is an island. We can use blockchain, yeah. We can use functions, meh. We can build out chatbots, But all of them have to connect to the ecosystem that your company has. And our goal is to make it easier, number one, to get started, and number two, to connect them. Which is why, from a development platform perspective, we combine combination of data services, integration, general common services, back-end and front-end tooling in simple-to-consume, easy-to-enable, highly resilient platforms. It's not a set of islands. This is a whole, think of it like Europe. A number of different countries all coming together into one group that is larger than the sum of the parts. And as somebody from the UK, I can only apologise for Brexit on behalf of my government. But here we go. I'll leave you with this. We're committed to working with the development community. We're committed in terms of open source. We're committed in terms of providing and helping you to gain access to open source more easily. Developer.oracle.com is a space where there's a great deal of collaboration, not just from the developer community, but also from Oracle as well, to share best practices, approaches, new technology advancements, techniques, and new ways of working. And the technologies that you have seen today are all, without exception, available. And if you have a look around upstairs, there's a little card or a scanning thing. If you haven't registered already, take the $500 trial and go and have a look. Experiment with the Chatbot platform. It's available in the trial. Experiment with the blockchain platform. That was marketing are going to shoot me for this, but here we go. That was released last weekend. So it's now available today. It's something that when you fire up your trial, you'll be able to go and get your hands on and get started with it today. So I encourage you to not only join us in developer.oracle.com, but also get a trial and start trying out some of these technologies and seeing what it is that perhaps Oracle can bring to you to accelerate your experience of all of these new technologies as they come up. So with that, I'll thank you very much for your time. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Karim Zain, who's both VP of Sales and also country leader for France.
Ok, bonjour tout le monde. Si c'est ok pour vous, on va faire cette section en français et je vous montrerai pas PowerPoint. Donc ça va être assez rapide, mais il y a quelques messages que je veux partager avec vous qui sont, pour moi, qui sont vraiment importants. Et en fait, au nom d'Oracle France, c'est d'abord vous souhaiter un bienvenue spécial, particulier. C'était un point fondamental de pouvoir réunir, dans le cadre de cette initiative Corporate Oracle Code, d'avoir cette escale à Paris et réunir dans cette salle notre communauté de développeurs. C'est vraiment une très très bonne sensation et nous on veut remettre les développeurs au cœur de la stratégie d'Oracle et au cœur de l'approche d'Oracle en France. Donc un grand merci pour avoir accepté notre invitation, un grand merci pour être là ce matin. Et à titre plus personnel, avoir le monde du développement, ça me renvoie quelques années en arrière, parce que moi j'ai commencé mais il y a pas mal d'années, j'ai eu mon époque où je programmais. Les langages dont je vais vous parler, ça va vous faire sourire, hein. C'était du Turbo Pascal, de l'assembleur. C'est un peu loin, mais c'est comme ça que j'ai démarré dans le monde de l'informatique et c'est ce qui m'a donné goût à cette industrie. Et je pense que s'occuper des développeurs, c'est s'occuper de l'innovation, c'est au cœur en fait de toute la transformation qui est en train de se passer, votre travail, votre expertise. Et quand on parle d'Oracle, bah, le développement, on est une boîte de software, hein, c'est au cœur, c'est dans notre ADN. On en compte plusieurs dizaines de milliers, sans parler même de l'écosystème. C'est quelque chose qui est vraiment ancré dans notre mode de fonctionnement. Je ne me suis pas présenté, mon collègue l'a fait juste avant, mais en deux mots, je m'appelle Karim Zain, je suis membre du comité de direction et j'ai une responsabilité qui est être vice-président des ventes pour porter cette offre technologique, la plateforme, l'environnement du développeur. Concernant cette partie développement, je venais tout à l'heure en voiture et je suis arrivé un petit peu limite, il ne fallait pas que je perde plus de temps et on s'aperçoit que finalement, le développement est partout. Quand je conduis ma voiture, je prends un tram, j'utilise une application sur mon mobile, je joue à FIFA sur ma console de jeu préférée. Le développement a tout changé. Et vous êtes en fait présent dans toutes les étapes de notre évolution, de notre vie, la transformation numérique. Et en fait, nous, notre stratégie avec Oracle, c'est de remettre le développeur au cœur et avec cette équipe de développement, ce qu'on a mis en place, je ne sais pas si vous avez beaucoup parlé de l'offre Oracle, et je vais être extrêmement bref, mais il y a vraiment deux volets. Il y a le volet qui est la suite fonctionnelle, il y a le volet qui est la plateforme. Sur cette suite fonctionnelle, l'effort qui a été produit par notre équipe de développement, il est assez impressionnant. Aujourd'hui, on a une solution qui a été entièrement réécrite en mode cloud, native, software as a service, sur les aspects ERP, sur les aspects expérience client, les aspects logistiques. Et ça nous met dans une position qui est vraiment intéressante puisque des sociétés de toute taille peuvent s'occuper, peuvent moderniser et équiper leur processus métier. Et puis il y a le deuxième élément, c'est la plateforme technologique. On parle de plateforme ou infrastructure as a service, mais quand je vous regarde, en fait, c'est le SaaS pour les développeurs. C'est l'environnement dans lequel vous allez trouver sous la main tous les outils dont vous avez besoin pour innover. Donc développement d'applications, déploiement d'applications, intégration, pouvoir incorporer en mode service cloud tout un bouquet de services sur la partie IoT, blockchain, Internet des objets, big data, analytics. C'est vraiment notre stratégie de vous proposer une plateforme qui soit très complète. Je vais revenir sur deux points qui sont parfois méconnus, mais mes collègues en ont parlé. Le premier, c'est qu'on a une stratégie qui est vraiment solide autour de l'open source, avec d'abord un commitment qui est de vous mettre à disposition sur notre plateforme des standards. Et si on parle par exemple d'orchestration de containers, avoir Kubernetes qui soit disponible. Si on parle de la partie blockchain, des solutions comme Hyperledger, les environnements type Kafka. Donc on est vraiment committé en tant que société de vous proposer ces solutions open source. Pour une raison très simple, hein, c'est que la plus grande communauté de développement, ce ne sera pas des éditeurs de software, ce sera toujours l'open source. Et pour aller à la vitesse que nécessite la transformation digitale, on doit incorporer ces standards dans notre plateforme. Et puis il y a ce principe aussi du give back, de redonner, ce qu'on a fait dernièrement avec Java, et d'investir pour que des solutions open source prometteuses puissent être durcies, industrialisés de façon à ce que les grandes entreprises puissent les utiliser de manière robuste sur des applications critiques. Le deuxième sujet sur lequel on a une passion, c'est les startups. Oracle, alors, il y a longtemps, a été une startup. Il s'est passé quelques années depuis. On ne peut plus vraiment être qualifié de start-up aujourd'hui. Mais je pense qu'on comprend assez bien les défis que doivent relever ces entrepreneurs qui montent des business. Et on a un programme qui nous tient vraiment à cœur. Et à ce titre-là, j'aimerais demander à mon ami Jean-Marc de nous rejoindre, de façon à ce que tu nous présentes le programme d'accélération de start-up un peu plus en détail. Jean-Marc, rejoins-moi s'il te plaît. Ça va Jean-Marc.
Bonjour à tous. Alors merci Karim pour cette petite présentation. Je m'appelle Jean-Marc Huybonnois. Alors je suis désolé, mon nom est un peu plus compliqué, mais quand on se verra tout à l'heure là-haut, appelez-moi Jean-Marc Huy tout simplement, je le prendrai pas mal. Je suis Tech Mentor dans le Global Startup Ecosystem. Alors vous êtes ici à Oracle Code pour la première fois à Paris et c'est aussi la première fois que chez Oracle on s'est lancé dans cette initiative d'aide et de support aux startups. Alors dans la salle, je voudrais d'abord demander, bon, on est dans une conférence développeurs, de me dire qui développe sur un environnement de développement, enfin sur un laptop, plutôt Windows, levez la main s'il vous plaît. Super. Et inversement, si je pose la question plutôt sur un environnement Unix-like, on va dire, plutôt Linux, levez la main s'il vous plaît. Il y a un petit peu plus de monde. Merci. Donc je crois que j'ai fait le bon choix en choisissant ce format-là. Je vais vous parler un petit peu de trois choses. Alors c'est d'abord vous expliquer ce que c'est que l'accélérateur, le programme d'accélération d'Oracle et en quoi ça peut vous être utile. Deuxième chose, si vous faites moins chose, c'est vous expliquer justement ce que vous apporte le programme d'accélération de manière concrète si vous êtes une start-up. Et enfin, vous expliquer en faisant moins displays, tout simplement montrer un exemple de start-up qui a travaillé avec nous. Alors on va commencer, on va faire Accelerator moins explains. Alors tout simplement un accélérateur de start-up. Pourquoi chez Oracle? Eh bien parce que l'innovation, elle n'est plus seulement restreinte à certains foyers, on va dire, dans le monde. Et Oracle est né il y a 41 ans maintenant comme une start-up dans la Silicon Valley. Beaucoup de marques connues que vous connaissez, beaucoup de grands du monde de l'innovation sont effectivement nés et continuent à croître beaucoup dans la Silicon Valley. Mais il y a énormément d'innovations qui se passent ailleurs. Et on le voit ici, je crois qu'il y a des élèves de l'école 42 qui sont dans la salle ou dans la conférence. Il y a énormément d'étudiants qui s'intéressent à l'innovation. Et puis Xavier Niel, président de l'école 42, créateur de l'école 42, a aussi créé Station F, qui est un des plus gros incubateurs de start-up au monde. Donc c'est pour ça que aussi ce programme est implanté en fait à Paris. Et donc l'innovation n'est pas seulement aux États-Unis, sur la Silicon Valley, mais un peu partout dans le monde. Et donc la France est un de ces foyers. Ensuite, si vous réfléchissez bien, chaque start-up a la base de, par exemple, une application comme Uber qui va révolutionner le monde du transport individuel automobile. Ou vous voyez par exemple CityScoot sur la ville de Paris qui fonctionne très bien avec les scooters électriques en libre service. Là, on est dans le transport, mais sur plein d'autres sujets. En fait, vous voyez qu'à chaque fois, dans l'équipe cofondatrice de la start-up, on va bien sûr retrouver quelqu'un qui est en charge du business, en général le CEO. Mais on va surtout retrouver, et c'est un élément hyper important de la création de la start-up, eh bien quelqu'un qui est en charge du développement. On a un développeur, un technicien, un ingénieur qui est donc le CTO et co-founder de la start-up. Donc ça s'adresse à vous, vous qui êtes dans la salle, qui avez peut-être, et je crois même déjà que certains, en plus de leurs études, eh bien, ont créé des start-up ou sont CTO à temps partiel, à temps partagé d'une start-up. Ce programme s'adresse à vous. Et puis enfin, quand la start-up a fabriqué son premier produit viable pour le vendre sur le marché, c'est super, mais en général, vous l'avez développé vite fait, moyennement bien fait, pour aller sur le marché, commencer à le vendre, vous avez votre premier MVP, super. Mais qu'est-ce qu'il y a après? Qu'est-ce que vous allez faire après? Eh bien, lorsque vous allez avoir de la traction du marché, de vos clients qui veulent aller un peu plus vite et que vous allez multiplier le nombre d'opportunités commerciales, il va falloir scaler, il va falloir être hautement disponible. Et puis, comme vous avez développé en général un monolithe pour aller plus vite sur le marché, eh bien comment vous allez justement casser ce monolithe? Je pense qu'il y a des sessions aujourd'hui ou sinon vous êtes familier avec le concept de microservices. Eh bien comment est-ce qu'on aborde justement ces sujets-là? C'est pour ça que l'accélérateur vous aide dans ces démarches-là. Et d'abord, l'accélérateur, c'est un programme mondial qui est mené par un serial entrepreneur, Reggie Bradford, qui a créé 3 sociétés et dont la dernière, il l'a revendue à Oracle, donc il est assez successful, on va dire. Et c'est un programme qui est donc mené par la R&D, ce qui veut dire que nos ingénieurs qui développent nos produits, ce sont eux qui sont là aussi pour vous aider à développer votre produit et vous aider bien sûr à adopter les technologies Oracle que vous allez voir auxquelles on vous donne accès gratuitement. Et donc dans le programme, vous allez retrouver le fait que à l'opposé en fait d'autres programmes d'accélération, on ne prend pas de part au capital de votre start-up. On vous donne accès à des espaces de coworking, ce qui sur la région parisienne a une grosse valeur. Et puis surtout, on vous donne accès à les technologies cloud sur le cloud Oracle en PaaS et en IaaS à hauteur de 100 000 $ de cloud crédit. Enfin, moi qui suis le tech mentor de l'accélérateur de Paris, eh bien, je vous accompagnerai dans votre démarche de réflexion stratégique, mais aussi d'adoption du cloud Oracle. Et enfin, ce qui est intéressant pour le business de votre startup, eh bien, c'est comment accéder à plus de business. Et on a une équipe dédiée chez Oracle qui est en charge de faire du business développement pour vous trouver des opportunités auprès de nos clients que nous avons déjà dans notre portefeuille. Voilà, je vais conclure par vous donner un exemple de startup qui est en cours d'accélération. C'est notre 2e année d'accélération dans le programme. AOS, c'est une startup française qui veut dire appel d'offres simplifié. Dans le monde de la construction, lancer des appels d'offres, ça peut être très compliqué et très consommateur en temps. Donc eux, ce qu'ils font, c'est qu'ils digitalisent le processus de lancement d'appels d'offres et de collecte aussi des réponses des différents prestataires. C'est une super startup et on les a onboardés dans le programme il y a moins d'1 semaine. Et il y a quelques jours, ils sont venus donc à l'accélérateur pour travailler avec moi et ils m'ont dit, ben voilà, aujourd'hui notre MVP, c'est un monolithe qui tourne chez Scalingo, qui est un provider de PaaS français à Strasbourg, et on a développé notre monolithe en Meteor.js et MongoDB. On est très contents, ça nous a permis de lancer notre produit sur le marché. Aujourd'hui, voilà, on a de l'attraction, ça va de plus en plus vite, mais du coup, on n'a pas de visibilité sur le monitoring de notre infrastructure, on n'a pas de visibilité sur les performances, qu'est-ce qui se passe en cas de bottleneck par exemple. Et puis ce monolithe que l'on a, on aimerait bien le casser en plus petits morceaux, mais du coup, on n'est pas forcément équipé pour. Aussi, fun fact, j'ai discuté avec le lead développeur et vous voyez les moyens un peu que les startups ont au démarrage avant vraiment d'accélérer dans leur succès. Il me disait, j'ai mis en place une usine d'intégration logicielle, j'ai mis Jenkins, mais je l'ai installé sur mon serveur à la maison. Et donc après quelques heures de travail ensemble, on les a onboardés sur le cloud Oracle. Aujourd'hui, leur Jenkins tourne sur une infrastructure cloud d'Oracle, mais surtout, ils ont commencé donc à redévelopper leur plateforme sous forme de microservices qui font fonctionner sur du Docker et actuellement étudient la possibilité de aussi faire de la clusterisation avec Kubernetes. Donc en résumé, ils ont repris le contrôle sur leur infrastructure et ce qui va leur permettre de passer en mode industriel pour gagner plus de business. Voilà. Je vous remercie pour votre attention. C'était mon slide de conclusion. Pas tout à fait, en fait. Il y a un tout dernier slide. Je vous remontre mon slide de présentation de tout à l'heure, qui montre un petit peu le plan. Et en fait, il y a quelque chose à gagner. J'ai un petit goodie ici, un beau tote bag, un petit sac de course en fait, à vous faire gagner. Mais seulement pour la première personne qui lèvera la main et qui me donnera la bonne réponse, à savoir qu'il y a un bug dans ce slide. Qui saura me dire où est le bug dans ce slide? Monsieur a levé la main en premier. Super. J'étais pas sûr que quelqu'un trouverait aussi rapidement, mais bravo. Vous pouvez venir chercher votre tote bag. Bravo. Félicitations. Merci. Bravo. Et puis dedans, vous avez tout ce qu'il faut pour passer une bonne journée, boire du café, écrire avec un notepad Startup Cloud Accélérateur, etc.
Jean-Marc, si on veut en savoir davantage, comment on fait?
Eh ben, c'est très simple. En fait, on a un mini stand dans le Developer Lounge au rez-de-chaussée. Donc, je vous invite à venir me voir tout à l'heure. Je serai présent sur le stand. Et si vous souhaitez discuter de comment vous vous onboardez sur le cloud Oracle en tant que startup, je me ferai un plaisir de vous renseigner.
Merci beaucoup, Jean-Marc.
Merci.
Ok, alors j'espère qu'avec ce matin, peut-être on adresse certaines idées reçues. Oracle peut être vu comme une très grande société qui sert d'abord les entreprises de type CAC 40 dans le domaine de la finance. Vous savez quoi, c'est vrai. On est très solide dans ce domaine-là, en ERP, en base de données, pour les grands comptes. Mais on a également une stratégie qui est vraiment appropriée pour les toutes petites entreprises. Et 2 éléments, j'espère, qui sont bien ressortis. On aime les startups, on aime les développeurs. Et chez Oracle, et chez Oracle France en particulier, on ne veut pas simplement qu'il y ait un événement un jour, comme ce matin, mais qui est vraiment une continuité dans la relation. Donc vous verrez dans l'après-midi des possibilités vraiment de garder un suivi, une relation proche avec Oracle. Et je vous encourage notamment à nous suivre sur les réseaux sociaux et tous les meet-up dans lesquels nous allons participer ou que nous allons créer. Au nom d'Oracle France, je voulais une nouvelle fois vous remercier et vous dire à très très bientôt. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Karim. So, just to finish, oh, pardon, on va faire en français cette fois-ci, ça va être quand même plus facile. Alors, je veux juste en faire un petit peu de logistique à la fin et pas vous garder trop longtemps. Alors, juste remercier les sponsors qu'on a eu donc pour Oracle Code. Voilà. Quand vous êtes rentré donc à l'événement, donc à côté de l'enregistrement, il y a toute une petite partie où il y a des démonstrations. Une des activités, c'est justement le zip lag. En fait, vous faites une petite un travail de code, et si vous êtes très rapide, les 3 qui seront le plus rapides aujourd'hui vont gagner un Super Nintendo. Donc bon, arrêtez quand il y a une petite pause et c'est un petit peu une petite distraction. Alors pendant le midi, on a justement un panel avec pour couvrir la diversité et encourager en fait les femmes à participer plus dans le monde tech. Alors on a 3 intervenants ici, mais on a un total en fait de 5 parce que 3 c'est pas suffisant. Les hommes sont donc ça se passera ici. Vous êtes tous invités, c'est pas exclusivement pour les femmes, évidemment on encourage toutes les femmes à venir, mais c'est donc vous aurez le déjeuner qui est juste à l'extérieur et donc vous pouvez le prendre ici et puis joindre la discussion. Ah oui, alors quelques annonces, ce sont des sorties de produits qui se sont passées dans les 3 derniers mois. Alors qui fait du Java ici? Parce que tout à l'heure, d'accord, donc un peu plus, un tiers disons. Donc on a lancé, on a sorti donc Java 10 en mars. Et c'était la première sortie de produits qu'on a fait donc avec cette série de sorties de produits qui se passent en fait tous les 6 mois. On est en train de travailler sur 11 actuellement et vous pouvez aussi le tester. Alors aujourd'hui, je sais qu'on a Bernard Traversat qui est en fait avec nous, qui est le VP de la plateforme Java et qui est aussi français, qui a une session. Donc je vous invite en fait, si vous faites du Java, à aller à sa session. Jean-Michel Doudou aussi a fait une excellente session. Voilà. Alors qui parmi ces gens aussi sont du Paris Jog, membres du Paris Jog? Alors là, que 3-4 mains. Alors vous devriez, enfin il y a vraiment une grande communauté de développeurs, mais aussi de Java développeurs sur Paris, et je vous invite quand même à vous connecter et à joindre le Paris Jog. On a le leader du Paris Jog d'ailleurs, enfin Jean-Michel fait partie. Si, il fait partie. Il dit non, mais en fait il fait partie. Il présente là tout le temps. Et donc on a Santam qui est aussi qui fait partie de l'organisation. Donc si vous voulez savoir plus, n'hésitez pas à lui demander. Alors une autre sortie de produit qui est assez intéressante, c'est le Graal VM. Alors c'est vraiment un VM donc pour les polyglottes, hein, donc pas juste Java. J'adore Java. Enfin je suis community manager sur Java, donc c'est mon petit bébé. Mais on fait aussi JavaScript. Vous pouvez déployer aussi du JavaScript, du Ruby, du Python. C'est gratuit et vous pouvez le télécharger en fait de GitHub. Alors je vais passer assez vite. MySQL 8 est sorti, donc il y a une nouvelle version qui est sortie en mai. Donc elle est plus rapide, aussi des nouvelles fonctionnalités autour de JSON qui sont aussi intéressantes. Le Visual Builder Cloud Service, c'est un outil où vous pouvez facilement développer une application pour mobile et puis web. Donc dans l'espace que j'expliquais, qui est donc où il y a tous les démos, ils présentent aussi, il y a quelqu'un aussi qui peut vous donner une présentation plus profonde sur ce produit. Donc je vous invite à passer aussi. Même chose pour le Developer Cloud Service. Ça c'est un outil de collaboration en fait pour développement. Et vous pouvez aussi avoir une démonstration là aujourd'hui. Alors, Kubernetes, évidemment, on a notre propre version de Kubernetes qui fonctionne très bien avec notre cloud et tous les outils containers. Alors, on a toute cette initiative, donc vous avez entendu Karim au niveau local, et on a une grande initiative sur les développeurs. Et en partie de cette initiative, nous avons fait un nouveau site web. Donc sur ce site web, vous pouvez trouver des informations très pratiques. Alors tout sur Java, sur JavaScript. On a aussi de l'information sur Chatbot et puis blockchain. Donc pour le développement, c'est vraiment très utile d'avoir tout dans le même endroit. Je vous rappelle aussi Oracle Université. Donc si vous voulez vous approfondir une expertise, c'est l'endroit où vous pouvez aller. On l'a mentionné plus tôt dans la journée, c'est James, je pense qu'il l'a mentionné, spécialement pour cet événement. Donc tous les gens qui sont à l'événement peuvent avoir $500 de crédit pour tester n'importe quel service du cloud. Donc n'hésitez pas, je pense que ça fait partie de, ça doit être dans le, il y a le URL ici, mais vous pouvez trouver aussi cette information à l'entrée. Alors encore une fois, téléchargez l'application mobile, comme ça vous aurez l'agenda pour toute la journée. Et n'hésitez pas à tweeter #OracleCode. Voilà, donc voilà, je vous laisse. Ah oui, alors ensuite, là, il y a une pause donc, de 15 minutes et on vous invite à aller prendre un t-shirt. Le t-shirt est juste à côté de l'enregistration, donc juste sur le côté quand vous montez l'escalier sur votre gauche. Voilà. Et je vous souhaite une très bonne journée et encore merci. Merci beaucoup d'être venu et d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. Merci.